So I want to draw a real distinction here. I am a hardliner when it comes to clean air and clean water. This is our homeland, the United States of America. Part of being an America First conservative is we respect America the Beautiful. The God that has given us the gifts that this country enjoys. I think that we don't respect this country and we don't respect God's gifts to this country when we desecrate them in the way that we have. And I think that you're not free to just go dump in somebody else's river. We're not even enforcing the laws as they exist, both through private tort civil liability as well as through the front door of even straight environmental regulations that we turn a blind eye on. And the distinction that I draw is between that and the climate change agenda, which is different than, our global surface temperature is going up, yes, and other man-made causes, yes, but there's an agenda that goes with it that has nothing to do with clean air, clean water, or our environment, that I worry is actually evidence of Chinese manipulation of the United States. Because right now what we're doing is we're shifting the carbon emissions that we're shackling in the United States, we're shifting those carbon emissions to China in the name of stopping global warming. That doesn't make sense because it's the same carbon emissions, and in fact, it's even doubly worse. In China, methane leakage for every unit of oil production is worse than the United States. A unit of methane is 80 times worse for global warming than a unit of carbon dioxide. So in the name of telling ourselves we're addressing global climate change, we're shifting those carbon emissions, with methane leakage being worse on the other side of the world, but turning a blind eye to it. The same people who are against fossil fuels are also against nuclear energy, which is the greatest form of carbon-free energy production known to man. So the contradictions run rife. So that's where I draw a distinction. I'm against the anti-carbon agenda, which I think is bad for American flourishing and bad for human flourishing. And I think the right answer is adaptation. Right answer to changing climate is adaptation, as we always have. And the best fact for that is the climate disaster-related death rate, the death rate from it, is down by 98% over the last century. From hurricanes, heat waves, tornadoes, droughts, etc. The number of people who die from one of those is down by 98% over the century. Is that because those things have stopped happening? No. It's because we have adapted through technological advances, building quality, and otherwise that were powered in part by fossil fuels. I separate that from clean air and clean water, where we have failed dramatically. Look at my own home state, East Palestine. That spill and the lack of liability for it. I mean, you look at what's happening in the Ohio River. And I don't say this I haven't talked about this much on the campaign trail, you can look at this, but I don't like to boast about this, but I'm not waiting until I get to the White House to drive change. This country's blessed us with the American dream. We don't wait, my faith teaches me you don't wait till tomorrow to do something good when you can do something good today. I mean, when the East Palestine disaster happened, I didn't show up and make a stunt of it, but our family did support the relief efforts with major contribution. I mean, even here when we came through, it happened to have been after the building burned down here in Davenport. We supported the recovery efforts the day after. And so I believe in private action to drive positive change, but I also believe in a refocused EPA. And the focus needs to be clean air and clean water in this country. And I think the climate change agenda has been dilutive and distracting to actually seeing through the mission of both at the federal and at the local level enforcing the laws that we already have on the books to ensure clean air and clean water. That's where I land. Yeah. So I favor the renewable fuel standard, but it's on a maybe slightly different basis than you're used to hearing. I'm a guy who bases my decision on the why, the first principles. I'm a capitalist. I'm pro-capitalism, and I believe it is still the best system known to man to lift people up from poverty. And too often we're taught to apologize for it. I don't think we should. Now, the first best solution would be true consumer choice at the pump. Give consumers the choice. We have certain places in the country where that exists. Places like Wichita, Kansas. We have other pockets of the country where that exists. You see it in other countries as well. What do you see where you have true consumer choice at the pump? Consumers choose a blend that is higher in ethanol than the minimums set in the RFS. But we don't have consumer choice at the pump because that wasn't true capitalism. You have historical oil industry and otherwise that have choked out the ability to have true competition at the pump. So in absence of that, the RFS is the second best alternative. And so until we have consumer choice at the pump, that's not going to happen in the foreseeable future. That's my pro-market basis for supporting the RFS. And that's different from, I think it's politically convenient when people come to Iowa and say, hey, for the 6 months that I'm running for US president, I love Iowa, Iowa ag, and I'm going to support this until January 15th is over, and then I go to New Hampshire and Nevada and I say something else. I actually find this has persuaded people in other states, is to say that, okay, I love free market capitalism. We have to acknowledge that we have vestiges of crony capitalism that have made permanent changes in the country that stop us from having, for example, true consumer choice. So in absence of that, what's the next best alternative? And people choose ethanol in the higher blend for two reasons, in order of importance. One is it's cheaper. And second, I think this matters to some people, to know that it comes from the United States of America. And that's a legitimate basis for a consumer to make a choice. So when you don't have that consumer choice, you have to be pragmatic and choose the second best alternative. And so that's my pro-market justification for actually standing for it. And I do think that also, as the US president, I'm looking after our national security as my top priority. I do think our energy security and self-sufficiency is essential to our national security over the long run. The events of the last couple of years last couple of months even, have reminded us of that reality. And that's yet another reason why the pro-market justification to make sure that we are allowing for those who produce biofuels, including ethanol, to be able to compete is vital to the United States, and I stand on principled footing when I say so.